Is there a space for strategic drops in T20 cricket?
Oh, that's a naughty question.
Hello and welcome to everyone to this 5th episode of Wrong Ones with Weston. Like you've seen, this is a T20 oriented show, and not only the game of T20, but the game of cricket keeps evolving. So similarly, we keep developing new wrong ones and new questions for Dan to tackle. And this time we'll begin with, we also like to keep changing up things because variation is important in the game of cricket. If you get predictable, that's the time when batters can tend to get the better of you. So similarly, we'll also keep Dan guessing what we have in store. So today we'll begin the show by talking about the South African team and their squad for the World T20. So Dan, your first thoughts on the South Africa squad for the World T20, and a latest update is that Dwayne Pretorius has been ruled out due to a fractured thumb.
Yeah, so that creates a problem, I think, for South Africa in terms of balancing up the lineup. So, and there's another problem that I want to kind of discuss as well as we move through this preview is so Pretorius, the only players in the reserve list who are kind of all-rounders are Andile Fatakwaya and to a certain extent Marco Jansen. But I think neither of those are anywhere near Pretorius in terms of batting ability. And that creates potentially a really, really long tail for South Africa, no matter who they pick. Personally, I think they probably will go with Marco Jansen as the injury replacement, which seems to make more sense to me. But then him at 7 and like a Maharaj Rabada, Nokia Shamsi or something like that as a very long tail, and it's going to create a lot of responsibility on the top 6. And while the top 6 are very capable players, I think that sort of lack of balance is a problem. Now, actually, I would go a little bit more left field with my replacement player. And I would go much more like for like in terms of balancing the side up. And I would actually go for Wian Mulder over those other options. We had him at Leicester this summer, and he's an excellent player, quite underrated actually in T20. He's a good player of spin and a good player of pace. He's primarily, I think, a middle overs bowler, which is similar to Pretorius in skill set. And a much more capable batter than either Jansen or Fatakwaya as well. He's also capable of bowling a very good Yorker as well, which we spoke about quite a lot over the summer. And as a weapon, I think that he could use a lot more. So as a bowling asset, I think he could be a really interesting kind of like for like replacement for Pretorius. Although I don't think the South African selectors will go down that road. But for me, that's the decision I would make personally. Now, the other choice would be to bat Parnell at 7, and then again that ensures a long tail as well for Parnell, obviously, who's in the existing squad as well. But again, that's a long tail, and a big concern for South Africa is how do they balance up that lineup? And the other big concern, I think, is where does Temba Bavuma fit into this team as captain? And from 2021 onwards in T20 internationals, he's averaging 19 at a strike rate of 106. And I don't think there's anything in any domestic leagues to say that he merits a position in the team either based on just purely batting ability. So that's a big problem as well when you've got a long tail and you've got a batter who I think it's fair to say is clearly a below average batter at international level. That's another hurdle for them to overcome. It seems likely that they'll pick him ahead of Reza Hendricks as an opener, but I don't think that's a very good decision if we're talking about just purely on cricketing ability.
Cool. So, Dan, just to make it easy for the viewers, let's start with your 11 first, and then obviously we'll delve into the deeper questions.
Okay, so I mean, I'm constrained obviously to some degree by who they've picked, but I've gone with an 11 of this is what I would pick, not what I think that they would pick, of De Kock, Hendricks, Rosso, Markram, Miller, Stubbs, Mulder as an injury replacement for Pretorius, Maharaj, Rabada, Nokia, Shamsi.
So, I have a couple of questions here. Number one, even though you've picked Hendricks in your 11, but all of us know that Bavuma is going to be the likely starter. Do you think Bavuma can be given a role of a collapse arrester, like somewhat similar to how Australia were using Steve Smith in the last World T20, wherein he's only sent in if 2 or 3 quick wickets fall in the power play, and he's asked to make sure that a collapse doesn't happen. And if the team gets a great start, right, he might as well not bat at all, and let the other top 6 batters have a go, and then only come in at number 7, number 8. Do you think that is one strategy that South Africa can look at in terms of maximizing their resources?
It's certainly possible, but then the position that it looks like he'll come into would be as an opener. I mean, I don't really want to drop anyone out of Rosso, Markram, Miller, or Stubbs out of that top 6. So the question is, if obviously you can't adopt that strategy if he opens. So unless one of those four batters bat as an opener, then that's impossible to happen.
So that is that was the first question. The other question that I have is that you spoke of Pretorius being a handy bat, and we saw that when South Africa were in India earlier this year in the month of June, they had even promoted Pretorius as sort of a pinch hitter in a chase of 200 plus in Delhi. Do you think there's scope for Parnell, to use Parnell like that, or you don't think that it will help, because there's a possibility that Parnell could end up consuming more deliveries and making the chase tougher?
Exactly that. I think that Parnell doesn't have the same ability as a more an aggressive pinch hitter as Pretorius. Parnell has actually played a pinch hitting role in the past, but with pretty mixed returns, boundary percentage-wise, I think Pretorius is quite markedly higher. And certainly for me, I think Pretorius has much more upside as a hitter than Parnell does at this current stage of their careers.
Okay, good. So Dan, I have 2 follow-up questions of myself. One is, I understand that you did not pick Ngidi in your 11 and went for 2 spinners instead. Any specific logic for that? And number two is the option that they have is to maybe play Marco Jansen in place of Nokia and bat him at 8. This might shorten their tail a bit. What are your thoughts on that?
It would, but I think that ultimately, if we're looking at bowling quality, I think Nokia is still quite markedly ahead of Marco Jansen at this stage of their careers. And generally, we want a bowling strong team if possible with the resources. If you've got the resources to have a bowling strong team, it makes sense to try and go down that road and maximise that. With regards to Ngidi, it's simple as he's an excellent wicket taker. Strike rate, balls per wicket is virtually unparalleled actually in T20 cricket. But economy-wise, boundary percentage conceded-wise, Nokia and Rabada have better numbers than him, which is why I went for those 2 over Ngidi. Although I think that Ngidi is a very, very strong bench option and certainly would walk into a lot of other teams in this tournament as well. So that's a nice amount of riches that South Africa have got with Jansen as well in the pace bowling group, that they've got some very good paces.
Yep. And your thoughts on going in 2 spinners instead of an extra pacer?
2 spinners. I like that because generally speaking, spin in the Big Bash has gone pretty well. For example, we've got big boundaries. We've got a lot of players who are domestically in Australia at least are quite inept against spin. And you look at most teams in this tournament, I don't see that there's that many teams with an array of elite spin hitters. So generally my mantra is to try and bowl a lot of spin in matches if possible. And certainly we've got Shamsi as an unorthodox wrist spinner, and you've got Maharaj as a left-arm orthodox, and you've also got off-spin option from Markram primarily among the batting group, but also to a lesser extent Stubbs too. You kind of got all bases covered really for matchups and things like that. So for me, that's nice to have. It's very well balanced, that spin bowling lineup.
But Shamsi's numbers, particularly in recent times, haven't been great. And if you consider the teams that are there in South Africa's group, One is India, again, an opponent which has rarely done well against Shamsi in the recent matches, whether that be the 5-match T20 series earlier this year or, in that one game that happened. Even in the last ODI, Indian batters did attack Shamsi. And Pakistan also, will have right-handers who will be able to play Shamsi better. And, I'd say that they are better players of spin maybe than any other country. So you really think going in with two spinners is the better option, and rather than not hit them with pace, because a lot of Pakistani batters might struggle against pace as opposed to Shamsi's spin bowling.
Well, and this is where I think it leads on really neatly from last week's conversation about the influence of Shadab Khan in the Pakistan batting order. Now, as we saw again recently this week, it seems to be a no-brainer to bat him in the top 5, and obviously we predicted that was a good option, and he came good in that role this week. But the question is whether that Pakistan will go with that in the tournament, and certainly I don't see that the likes of Iftikhar Ahmed or Kristil Shah or even Hyder Ali, who's a pretty better player of spin than say Iftikhar Ahmed, are going to get hold of Shamsi. I don't see it happening very much. So I think for me, with Pakistan in particular, it's all about how they decide to compose their starting 11.
Fair enough. Where do you particularly see South Africa ending the group stage? Do you think that they'll be able to top their group?
I have them in a group of maybe 5 teams who are capable of doing well in this tournament. India, England, Australia, South Africa, and Pakistan I think are all very, very capable of winning this tournament or getting to the business end of the tournament. But I don't think that's a clear favourite. So this is what we find with these knockout tournaments, is that there's a lot of high volatility, high variance moments in these group stages and in the knockout stages that dictate a lot. And I'm not keen to suggest an overall favourite. I think that, like I say, there's maybe 5 teams who look better than the rest, and they're the ones who I think will have the greatest chance moving forward.
Yeah. So basically, Dan, as per you, the other group is sorted. It's the India's group, which is gonna be the group of death.
Yeah.
I would want your opinion on Tristan Stubbs. I mean, he has shown his capability, but big occasion, Australian conditions, intimidating atmosphere. How much on 10 will you give him in terms of your expectations from him to succeed?
I don't have a specific expectation level yet. For me, I think that he's a super exciting talent. We've seen that over the last 6 months or so. But we've also seen perhaps that he's still very, very raw as well. And it would be a lot to ask him to be a consistent match winner in what is a very high variance role as a number 6 finisher, if you like. And we've seen, for example, Glenn Maxwell's played that role quite a few times before, and he's had whole IPLs where he's struggled. If you play an attacking role, that can be what happened. So I don't think that you can really judge Tristan Stubbs on whether he's going to be a good player or not based on this isolated World Cup. I think we need to look at him over a bigger sample size and also understand the fact that he's still young, he still lacks experience, and should be, you'd like to think, on a really big upward curve in terms of, as he gains more experience and exposure against different bowlers and different conditions, that he's going to get better and better. So for me, this isn't the time to judge Tristan Stubbs. The time to judge Tristan Stubbs is in several years' time, I think.
One last question before we wind up this section. Who do you think is probably their X factor or most important player going into this World T20?
I think the X factor, you would say, would probably be Stubbs in terms of having the player who's definitely got the highest sort of strike rate upside, if you like. But I think the key players for South Africa, if you're looking at it among the batting group, with someone like David Miller, who's consistently played very well for South Africa over the last year or two, and is almost like their banker kind of batsman, if you like. And obviously we know that they've got some high quality pacers as well, regardless of who they pick as well. So for me, those players are going to have to play well for South Africa to have a major impact in the tournament.
Now we move on to a team which actually created some sort of surprise in recent times. The team that I'm talking about is Sri Lanka. They had started the Asia Cup quite badly, having lost to Afghanistan by getting all out under 100 and then losing with almost 10 overs to spare. But from there on, everything went up for them, and they pretty much went undefeated and won the Asia Cup. So, Dan, I want to know from you, what are your first thoughts of Sri Lanka going into the World T20? And yes, they'll have to play the qualifiers. Do you find that surprising?
So I don't think they're going to have major issues in the qualifiers. I think that their bowling strength will be easily good enough to see them get through that without that much difficulty. Where I feel that Sri Lanka are going to struggle more is with the bat, and I just don't see where the volume of runs in terms of strike rate and getting to sort of 180 plus totals is gonna happen on a regular basis. So before I went before the show, I went through their data, and I looked at perhaps what their likely 11 is going to be. And then this is their top 8. This is their numbers for 2021 onwards, so start of 2021 onwards. Nissanka 30, average 116 strike rate. Kusal Mendes 25 120. Hasaranga 24 120. Here's the star, Rajapaksa 29 143. Gunatilaka 13 119. Shanaka 28 125. Hasaranga 15 127. Karunaratne 17 108. Now those numbers are poor by anyone's standards. And so for me, we talked about Pakistan several weeks ago as a bowling heavy team. This is even more extreme in this case of a bowling heavy team, where you have two world class spinners in Hasaranga and Tristan, and it's going to be very, very much down to the performances of Hasaranga, Tristan with the ball, Rajapaksa with the bat. I think that they're the key players for Sri Lanka, and to some extent you could see maybe a cameo from Dasan Shanaka or something like that with the bat occasionally as well, that might propel them to a competitive score. They've got some injuries in their pace bowling group with Kamira and Kumara, both injury doubts. So without them, the pace bowling group looks pretty inexperienced if they can't play. And although I do wonder if they could have picked Matisha Patarana as a kind of a sight unseen weapon ahead of Kumara, particularly with those fitness doubts. And Patarana looks, for the listeners and viewers who haven't seen him bowl, he's like a junior Malinga. And we've seen, I think it's fair to say, with players like that, with those unorthodox actions, Malinga, Bumrah, Naveen, Patarana now coming through as well, the batters find it very, very difficult to pick these bowlers to start with until they've played them a bit more and they've got a lot of video on them and stuff like that. And I think that he could have been a really nice sight unseen weapon for them going into the World Cup against batters who probably haven't ever seen anything like him before.
So I think his Asia Cup performance lost him a spot. If he would have done slightly decently there, probably they would have given him a run. But yeah, I think Gurkirat, you had a question.
Yeah, so these numbers that you put out, Dan, they are numbers from all T20s or T20 internationals?
Internationals.
Okay, this is this year or beginning of 21?
From 2021 onwards, start of 2021 onwards, so almost 2 years.
Okay. So my question to you is that, do you think these numbers are maybe a reflection of the volatile environment that they have, and not just in the country, but even with their board? Because there are a lot of changes that keep happening in the Sri Lankan cricket team. Sometimes we see players get dropped out of nowhere. Someone like Rajapaksa had to announce his retirement because he was not meeting their fitness standards and everything else that has been there. So do you think these numbers are an absolute true reflection of their skill, or do you think it's maybe somewhat to do with the volatile environment and maybe a little bit of their approach, or do you think no, it's largely down to the skill?
I think, as with a lot of things in life, it's probably somewhere in between the two things. We know that obviously there's been that volatility, as you say, and maybe a bit of a fear factor that is involved with that does come naturally. And you could probably say you could probably have a similar conversation about Bangladesh in that vein as well. But ultimately, I think both Sri Lanka and Bangladesh as well, they just also lack power players and hitters in general. So I went through some domestic data for Sri Lanka, actually. And because I just thought to myself, is this really the best that they've got? Are they missing someone really, really obvious? And in the recent Invitational T20 League, the best batter was actually Hasaranga, who struck at 162. And only 6 batters had a strike rate over 130. So there's not really anyone in the domestic player pool who you're saying, okay, well, they're just making a massive mistake by not picking. There is the cupboard's pretty bare. Now, the one player that did catch my attention from looking at some data, I haven't ever watched him play. I wouldn't know him if he walked past me in the street. But there's some good numbers. A left-hander with some good numbers is called Thank Dabare. I don't know if that's his pronunciation. Hopefully a Sri Lankan listener can correct me on that and also give us some insight into him. Because I wonder if he could be a solution. He's age 24, clearly an intent merchant, 83 strike rate in red ball, 114 in 50 over, and 140 in T20, and bowls some useful off spin as well. So that purely from a basic numbers perspective, looks like he could be an interesting conversation point for them in terms of their selection.
Yeah, and I mean, Dan, I have some anecdotal evidence as well to suggest the point that you're making. So after Rajapaksa started playing for Punjab, he said in an interview that this is the first time in his life that he has seen a power hitting coach. So this is something that that is not part of the Sri Lanka setup, which is in this day and age is slightly surprising, and again leads us to the kind of strike rate numbers that you've shown.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Okay.
So it's all about input and output, really. At the end of the day, isn't it? If you've got a power hitting coach, then the chances are that you're not going to have a team who strike at 115 or 120. You're going to have a team who strike at 140 or 150 instead. So yeah, perhaps that's something that Sri Lanka needs to integrate into their coaching group.
Okay, what's your 11 like?
No, okay. just before we go there, just one question that I have. Now, you laid down the numbers for the top 8 that they have. And I think in there you had someone like Charat Asalanka. But there's also Dhananjay de Silva in the squad. And, he's had decent performances in test matches. So do you think he could walk into that 11 also because he's one of the better players of pace bowling that they have? And similarly, do you think their problems with the batting is kind of similar to the problems that West Indies have as well, where there aren't enough batters who can play good hard length pace bowling?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. With regards to Dhananjay de Silva, I think he's had enough chances at international level to put his mark on the Sri Lankan scene. Now, looking at his numbers, he actually strikes up less than 110 in his T20 international career, which is of 25 matches. So that's actually a pretty reasonable sample size and a concern. Now, his domestic numbers are markedly better than that. But the fact that he's clearly not a 6 hitter either. 6 sixes in 413 balls in his international career and still running at around just over 3% sixes in all T20s over his entire career. It suggests that he's not the power hitter that Sri Lanka are crying out for either. So for me, he's not the solution. And also, if we're looking at other formats as well, a 60-match ODI sample with a strike rate under 80 also leans towards the fact that he's not anywhere capable of playing that power hitting game on a consistent basis.
Fair enough. So, what's your 11? What's your starting 11 for Sri Lanka?
Okay, I went with Hatham Nissanka, Kusal Mendis, Charat Asalanka, Bhanuka Rajapaksa, Danushka Gunatilaka, Dasan Shanaka, Wananda Hasaranga, Chamika Karunaratne, Mahesh Tikshana, Dushmantha Chamira, and Lahiru Kumara, assuming both of those are fit.
Okay, Dan, first thoughts. do Sri Lanka have the best spin attack in the tournament?
It's certainly up there, isn't it? I mean, and we're going to go on to Afghanistan in a minute, who have another great spin lineup as well. And I think that this is where perhaps some of the smaller teams can actually cause a shock, because 8 overs of incredibly high quality spin can really tie any team down, regardless of who they are. So if Hasaranga and Tikshana have great tournaments, anything is possible, but they're going to have to do that for Sri Lanka to be competitive, I think.
What do you reckon should be the ideal go-to method or a scenario for Sri Lanka to succeed in this tournament? Do you think they should try and get in another specialist batter, or do you think that they should in any scenario win the toss and choose to bowl and look to restrict the opposition to a score as minimal as possible, or do you think they should bat first and then try and post as many as they can, because they have decent bowling?
Because we're probably not going to get that much dew, so we can. There's going to be less toss bias than there would be perhaps in the subcontinent, and with a spin-heavy team, I quite like batting first and looking to try and squeeze and put a position under a bit of pressure with the scoring rate, so that spin squeeze, if you like. So if you can maybe get your position needing even tens with 6 overs to go, you're putting them under pressure. Even if you bowled out your spinners, you're still putting your position under a bit of pressure. And so, if you're consistently getting 8 overs for 50 out of your 2 spinners, then you're going to be in a position where you can squeeze teams quite a lot. And so I quite like that approach generally.
Also, in one of the games last World T20, I think it was against Ireland, where Hasaranga had come out to bat in the power play. He was Sri Lanka were 3 down quite early, and then he played a 70 odd. Do you think Sri Lanka can look to try that out again in this World T20 by promoting someone like Hasaranga at a point of time, maybe in the middle overs, to try and elongate their batting somewhat and try and use his batting ability and skill?
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe more power play oriented though, because I think with Hasaranga, he's not really a 6-hitter either. But he does have a lot of intent and decent boundary percentage, but it's very, very four oriented. So for me, power play maybe where he's looking to try and hit the gaps and play good cricket shots, if you like, could be a great role for him actually.
So, Dan, this is something which did not cost them much during the Asia Cup, but it can come back to bite them at some point of time. 3 back-to-back lefties in the middle order makes it easy for the teams to target them, right?
I'd rather have 3 back-to-back lefties than 3 back-to-back righties. So you look at lefties, well, they're only going to really be matched up against off spinners, and not many teams have a specialist off spinner in their group. They're looking at batters who bowl off spin. Whereas if you've got a load of right-handers in your team, you're really vulnerable to specialist left-arm orthodox or left spinners. So for me, I've got less of a problem with 3 lefties than I do with 3 righties.
Do you think if you look at how the draws are, there's a good possibility that Sri Lanka end up in the group of Australia, New Zealand, and England? Do you think Sri Lanka can cause some headaches over there to any of the top 3 teams? And there's Afghanistan as well.
Definitely. And if you look at Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, both of them have got, as I said earlier, well spinners, and they're bowling against teams who maybe aren't the best players of spin. England probably got better players of spin than Australia and New Zealand. I think that they could actually really look to tie them down quite considerably, actually. And I think this is going to be the route of success for the Sri Lankas and the Afghanistans in this tournament, is if they can do that, then that's their route to success. I'm not saying it's guaranteed by any means, but I think it's the template they need to take in order to give themselves the best chance.
Your first thoughts on Afghanistan, Dan?
They're improving. They're still several batters light, but I do feel that this tournament is their best opportunity out of any tournament so far. What we've seen in recent major tournaments is they've been very, very close to creating a shock. I think that India in the last World Cup, and I think they gave India quite a good game in the 50 over World Cup previously as well. And there's certainly upset potential in this team to beat anybody. It's just about all of them performing on the day. Now, the concern for me, as I say, is the batting. Only Gurbaz and Najibullah Zadran strike at above 125 in T20 internationals from the start of 2021 onwards. Although it's also fair to suggest that Hasaranga, Sazai, Mohammad Nabi and Rashid Khan are obviously clearly capable of doing that as well, but they just haven't done it. Well, they've obviously got that huge upside in terms of their strike rate as well. There's a lack of batting depth in the group generally. I probably would have kept Karim Janat in the group as a batting all-rounder, but after playing in the Asia Cup, they've dispensed with him. The bowling group is exceptional. We've got world-class spinners, and so much so that it's very, very difficult to fit in Case Ahmed into the team. I think he would get into a lot of other international teams. And they've finally got two high-quality pacers to go with the spinners as well. So traditionally, Afghanistan were very, very spin-heavy and lacked quality pacers. But now with Naveen ul-Haq and Fazal Haq Farooqi in the team, then they've got those bases covered really nicely as well. So bowling attack looks outstanding. And it's all on the batters now.
Yep, I was making the playing 11 in my head before we had this conversation, and there I had Nabi at 5, and that's it. I mean, the batting just stopped there, and I was like, yeah, few batters to go.
Yeah, so I didn't quite have Nabi at 5 in my team, but it wasn't far off. I went with Ramanullah Gabaz and Hasratullah Zazai to open. Ibrahim Zadran at 3, who primarily I think is anchor, but did show more intent in the recent Spagiza tournament where he averaged 53 and struck at 149 and had a solid Asia Cup as well. Najibullah Zadran, Darwish Rasuli, who's domestically done well but hasn't done so well in international cricket yet. But I think there's a lack of options, so he has to play. Mohammad Nabi at 6, Azmatullah Omarzai at 7, Rashid Khan at 8, and then Majid, Naveen, and Farooqi finish off the 11.
Tell me something about this player who you've named, Darwish Rasuli. I was also looking at his numbers. He's only played 4 T20Is, but seems to be someone who's done well at the domestic circuit. Average of 29, 136. Have you seen him play, or have you had the chance to observe him closely?
Yes, I've been watching his career actually for a couple of years because his numbers were pretty good, and I think in other formats as well were pretty impressive as well. So you could even argue the fact that Afghanistan took a little bit too long to integrate him into the group. But for me, based on domestic numbers, I think he's someone who we need to persevere with, and Afghanistan should do so. Hence why I've kept him in that 11 for the World Cup to start with.
Gurbaz or Najibullah? I mean, who would you rather have in your team?
I'll take Gurbaz all day long. I think he's super talented, 360-degree player. Keeps wicket as well to a high standard, and that can't be underestimated out of the top order as well. That flexibility that brings them to either pick a spare batter or another all-rounder. And I think the sky's the limit for this kid. I honestly really do. His power and intent is exactly what is required in the modern game of T20. And yes, he's still a little bit raw. He's still young. But you look at what he could be in 5 or 10 years' time, and it's scary. So for me, I would pick him all day long.
Yeah. As a side note, I was actually very surprised when Punjab did not go for Gurbaz in the auction.
Yeah, team combos.
Yeah. Your thoughts on Mohammad Nabi? His numbers are consistently going down over the years, and it almost seems like he's nearing the end of his career at last.
He probably is, but I still think he's better than what they've got. Maybe this will be a last major tournament for him. It'll be interesting to see how his career goes ahead of the next one. But I still think at this point in time he's good enough to get in their team, and I think probably also when you look at their group, it's quite inexperienced, a lot of young players in it. So he probably brings some really valuable experience and leadership quality into the group that probably is useful in this current squad.
So, what do you think about Afghanistan leaving out Farid Ahmed, the left-arm pacer? Because he had a decent Asia Cup, if I'm not wrong. He was the one who took those 3 wickets against Pakistan and sort of broken the game by dismissing Asif Ali. So I find it a little surprising that they have chosen to leave him out of the World T20 squad. What are your thoughts on that?
From my perspective, if they're going with 2 out-and-out pacers, it would be Naveen and Faruqi. I'm very, very strong on both players, actually, and I think both of them are exceptional, high potential players. I actually thought Farid Ahmed was in the squad, but I must be wrong. I thought he was a backup squad player. But do they have another backup pacer?
I'm just having a look at it. I'm having a look at the results.
There is one more left-arm pacer. I mean,
Mohammed Salim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him. Yeah.
So there is A. Zazai, S. Ashraf, R. Shah, I suppose, is Rahmat Shah, and Gulbadin Naib reserves.
So Sharafuddin Ashraf is a left arm orthodox spinner all-rounder. And so, Mohammed Salim is the backup bowler, yeah. But Farid Ahmed, I think, is in the squad. He was in the squad that I saw anyway.
Is Farid Ahmed Malik the same person?
Probably.
Yeah. Then he's in the squad.
Maybe it's a case of...
That is him, yeah. That is him. Yeah.
Maybe it's a case of Asghar Stanikzai becoming Asghar Afghan later on, and that's why I confused the... But yeah, from the squad that I saw,
he's definitely in it, yeah.
Yeah, Farid Ahmed Malik, he's in the team.
Yeah, so he must be that player. So again, where do you see Afghanistan doing better than last time, or do you think that the conditions in Australia will be to such an extreme that their batters will tend to struggle a lot more than what they did in UAE?
I think that's the potential for that to happen with big boundaries in Australia and perhaps fairly high intent batting. That's particularly with the opening batters. I think that's a big test for them. If their openers fire, anything is possible because we know that their bowling attack is extremely high quality. So for me, the success and failure of this group really goes towards Gabars, Zazai and Najibullah because we know what we're going to get out of the bowlers. We know they're probably almost certainly not going to let Afghanistan down. It's going to be the batters who are the difference between success and failure for Afghanistan. What success and failure actually is to be debated. I think success would be to beat some of the bigger teams. Maybe even if they don't qualify, they'll pick up several wins over some major nations. I think that would be real progress, and I think they're on the right lines to do that. Really.
Now we've already touched upon how they might challenge Sri Lanka. I don't think that they'd be able to challenge Australia because their batting might come up short. But do you think, given the kind of run that New Zealand have had in recent times, and given how much they struggle against spin, that contest between Afghanistan and New Zealand could turn out to be a tricky one for New Zealand?
It's the one that I've really earmarked as a banana skin for New Zealand. Really, a real tricky clash for them. Potential shock result, definitely. We look at how New Zealand have been batting in recent times with Williamson, Conway and Phillips yesterday hit 6 boundaries and 82 balls between them. And if they do that against Afghanistan have got a great chance. So for me, that's the one I earmarked as that in inverted commas shock.
Yep. So maybe Gurgit, we should be doing a watch along for that game.
That would be good.
We'll mark that. We'll decide that when we get closer to the tournament, because I think a lot would depend upon how someone like Finn Allen is also going up at the top. Because
absolutely.
In this recent try series, he's tried. He only looks to be the one who wants to start off quickly, because
yes,
the last game against Pakistan, New Zealand really struggled till the time Mark Chapman came on and hit 4 boundaries against Nawaz. So we'll have to see that, and we've already earmarked that fixture. But I guess this is all that is there to discuss about the Afghanistan team. So we are only doing one Mythbuster today because we've already elongated the road to the World Cup section. So one of the biggest one of the sayings that's there when it comes to T20 cricket is that a pace bowling all-rounder is the hottest commodity when it comes to the squad construction in a T20 league. How much do you agree with it, or how much do you disagree with it?
Okay, so I think that there's a lot to pack into such a simple question, if that makes sense. I think as I say a lot of the time with these Mythbusters and viewer questions, it does depend a lot on the roster construction of your team. So if you've got 7 bowlers and you've got a fast bowling all-rounder in your team, then that's clearly a luxury. They're almost like a designated hitter, if you like, rather than perhaps a frontline bowling option. But we've seen over the years in the IPL auction consistently that fast bowling all-rounders go for big money in the IPL auction. They are such a valuable commodity. And sometimes I think that it's probably fair to say that they've gone for figures which are far in excess of what they should have gone for. And so that's always worth bearing in mind as well. The value for money has got to be there. Now, a lot of the time, that's because there's 3 players who have that skill set in the auction, especially in a mini auction, and 8 teams all want those 3 players. So when you've got that dynamic, then you've got the potential. Demand is much higher than supply, therefore the price goes up. And that doesn't necessarily reflect the player's value to a team. However, saying that, historical research that I've done suggests that world-class all-rounders with what I call high match involvement are critical to the success of T20 teams. So when I talk about high match involvement, I talk about the number of balls and balls bowled and balls placed on average for an all-rounder. So if you look at some players worldwide who have a really high match involvement, you look at someone like David Willey, who domestically in England often bats in the top 3 and bowls 4 overs. Benny Howell, who obviously most people know I'm very, very strong on. He always bats in the top 7 and sometimes quite a lot higher in English cricket and always bowls 4 overs. And those players that have a very high match involvement. So if you break a T20 match down to 240 balls, and you know that a bowler's going to bowl 24 and maybe face, say, 15 with the bat, that's 39 out of 240 balls that they're influencing. And if that's a high-quality player influencing almost 6 of the balls in a match, then that's clearly a very, very valuable commodity. And actually, I'm hoping that I'm going to have time to finish off the Substack article that I'm writing about match involvement for all-rounders, which hopefully I'm going to be publishing tomorrow. So if you want to, any viewers who want to check that out, danweston.substack.com, I will be doing a full analysis of match involvement for all-rounders, because I think that there's a clear definition between genuine high-quality all-rounders and luxury players, and I want to break a few myths myself in terms of which players fall into those categories.
And then I assume the conditions of the tournament play a role as well. I mean, what sort of pitches those tournaments will be played on? What is the supply of the local talent is like? Like, for example, a fast bowling all-rounder in IPL is a luxury because there is not a lot of domestic talent.
Absolutely. Exactly that. And then again, it goes back to those supply and demand dynamics. You have, if you know that the only high-quality fast bowling all-rounder you've got in your domestic ranks is Hardik Pandya, then the 3 overseas players who fit that role as well are going to be highly sought after and go for big money. That's just, like I say, it's simply just supply and demand. And the conditions and the player pool dictate so much there, yeah.
Dan, do you think sometimes teams can get carried away with not. I wouldn't really call them all-rounders, but I'd say bowling all-rounders of sorts, because we saw that in this year's IPL that a team like Sunrisers Hyderabad, they had 4 overseas players for pretty much the same position, because they had Romario Shepherd, then they had Marco Jansen, and they had Sean Abbott, and they had Fazal Haq Farooqi, right? Now, Fazal Haq Farooqi doesn't offer much with the bat, but the other 3 still somewhat do. So do you think sometimes, when teams are picking bowling all-rounders or bowlers for the number 8, number 9 positions, they can get carried away with their secondary skill, that is with the bat, because someone like Shardul Thakur and Deepak Chahar also got 10 and 14 crores respectively. You would know this, that Punjab also were quite aggressive in their bids for someone like Odion Smith, but eventually they had to drop him somewhere midway through the tournament. So I want to know your thoughts on this, that can secondary skill of all-rounders sometimes overshadow their primary skill?
Yeah, I think that there's certainly some really good examples around the world of players who perhaps they don't get in the team as a batter, purely as a batter or purely as a bowler. And that's where I think that you look at the term luxury player and those players I'm drawn to straight away. I think that definitely IPL teams in the auction were very, very cognizant of players' batting ability. So, for example, domestically in particular, so those examples that you gave of Shardul Thakur and Deepak Chahar, because not many of the high-quality Indian bowlers do contribute positively with the bat. You could probably say Harshal Patel, someone else that influenced as well a little bit in terms of being able to bat at number 8. Now, it's important, I think, as we spoke about with South Africa lineup earlier, it's important for the batting not to just go to number 6 and then go to 5 bowlers. That's a potential disaster waiting to happen. So some players have got to offer secondary skills, that's absolutely for sure, but you've got to do your due diligence and find out who are the right ones. But for example, I would much rather have a bowler who can bowl 4 high-quality overs of above average expectation, but then just maybe hit 3 boundaries in 6 balls or 7 balls and play a cameo, high strike rate cameo, to with the bat in rather than someone who can last for longer but not hit. So you can see someone like Rashid Khan, for example, like that's probably a pretty similar dynamic to what he offers, and that's a super valuable skill set. But then by the same token, we've also seen Andy Flower's teams be quite successful in having those multifaceted players. I think he's gone on record of talking about that as an objective. Someone like, I remember when we played Trent Rockets in 100, they just kept on going at us. They had Daniel Sams was at number 8 or number 9 and played a massive innings in the end. And I also think that the onus is on the bowlers to actually try and upskill themselves as well. And this is something that I've talked a lot about with bowlers that I know and I've worked with, in terms of perhaps actually the biggest improvement that a bowler can make is actually their hitting. And what I want to see is bowlers being able to work on their power hitting and, as I said earlier, contribute maybe sort of 3 boundaries in 7 or 8 balls. And if they can do that, then they're going to become super valuable commodities in auctions around the world and drafts around the world. Because if you're a high-quality bowler and you can consistently hit 30% boundaries of like 7 or 8 balls, then the world's your oyster.
I mean, this discussion just leads me to a question of my own, and maybe Dan, I'll give you time to analyze it and maybe answer next week. I mean, what is the rarest commodity to find when it comes to all-rounders? I mean, let's just break it down on skill. A left-hander who's a spin basher and also a wrist spinner. Something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, I think most all-rounders are pace hitters because they tend to bat at like sort of number 7 or something like that. They're finishers. So yeah, spin hitting 4-over bowler who's left-handed or offers a left-arm variety in some way, shape, or form probably is a really valuable commodity. And moving forward, maybe you might find the ambidextrous one as well. And that would be I mean, imagine that would be they could go for huge money.
this is from someone who goes with the handle of Random Cricket Stats. He's actually seen our show last week, so thanks. So the question that he has is, last week you talked about the average value an elite leader adds statistically, and we spoke about MS Dhoni, saving 3 runs. Similarly, how much value does an elite fielder add?
Okay, so I remember in the 50-over tournament, the World Cup in 2019 in England, at least in English broadcast, there was stats which were given by, I don't know, some data company that tried to quantify the value of fielders in for each team. And actually, I think Jadeja, who wasn't playing for India but was basically just a specialist sub-fielder, had the highest positive value among all fielders. But he was less than 10 runs in a 50-over tournament, and a very, very few players were +5 or better. So if that's in a 50-over tournament, can you extrapolate that down to a T20? And you think, actually, it's very, very difficult for someone to be more than +2 in a T20 over a consistently long period of time, there's going to be peaks and troughs from match to match. I can remember there's been a couple of times this year where my teams have played against have fielded atrociously, and I've been, this guy must be like -20 in the field or something like that. But over a long period of time, that levels itself out. And I think that, for me, 90% of players are going to be in that area of between +2 and -2 overall, I would suggest.
Any outliers that are there who are probably, very bad or very good?
There's usually a couple of bad fielders in every team. What I tend to find is that coaches will tolerate no more than 2 poor athletes in the field generally, and they'll be like a 45 or something like that. Where anything more, they don't want to hide more than 2 players in the field generally. In English cricket now in particular, there's some unbelievable fielders. There really are some high quality fielders. Several that spring to mind straight away. Jordan Cox, who's just got into the England T20 squad, and George Garton as well, who both of them are excellent fielders. And they're probably 2 of the exceptional fielders who out of the country who's got a lot of exceptional fielders in their domestic group. And I think that's because there's been this big drive in English cricket to upskill in this area. It's not really tolerated to be a poor fielder, particularly for a young player these days. So we can see that standard rising even more. I don't really want to call out bad fielders, but I'm sure most people know who they might be, or the below average ones anyway.
Yeah, and then there is Rinku Singh in KKR. Yeah, I mean, so Dan, but there's something that probably analytics will not tell us is someone who takes exceptional catches. I mean, Jadeja maybe falls in that category who pulls out some exceptional catches, and how much runs would he have prevented by dismissing someone who's set. But then again, that leads to a lot of other type of analysis, which more complex than what we're talking about right now.
So we can break that down into maybe a bit more of a XC for expected catch compared to XG for expected goals in football.
Yeah.
So, for example, if a shot is outside the box in football, it might have plucking a figure out of the air, 0.1 XG or something like that. And a worldie catch from Jadeja might have a 0.1 XC in the fact that it's a 10% chance. But if you've got a player who's consistently taking those 10% chances, then you can ascertain how much value they add to the team. Because what cricket teams do a lot of the time with fielders, which I think is a big mistake, is that let's say a player is dropped on 20 and they go on to score 100. They say, the catch cost them 80. Well, that's a mistake, because actually the catch cost them the expected difficulty of the catch times the expected runs that player was supposed to get after the drop existed. So let's say that the expected runs that the player was going to get is another 20 after they've been dropped. and the catch difficulty had an XC of 0.8, so 80% of the time it would be caught, then you would say that the drop was worth 16, 0.8 times 20. That would be the cost of the drop. That's how I would look at it a lot more. But the problem is, for me, I mean, I'm pretty strong on that, quantifying catches and drops, building in that way. But I don't have the resources or the wherewithal to look at that kind of thing myself. But if I did, that's the avenues I would go down.
I just have a left field question since we are discussing fielding and catching. Is there a space for strategic drops in T20 cricket?
Oh, that's a naughty question.
I've been told that it already happens, but players don't admit it.
Well, I'll be honest. I've never been in a situation where a player has admitted to me that they had done a tactical drop, and it's certainly not something that I've discussed with any of my teams as a strategy. Now, I mean, it may well go on, and certainly there's scenarios where you definitely would consider it. So, for example, just using a real random scenario. Let's say you're facing the West Indies and there's 5 overs to go, and Darren Bravo and Weston Chase are batting, and if you catch one of them out, then Andre Russell comes in. Then you're going to want to do that tactical drop because you don't want Andre Russell to bat. So yeah, there's certainly, I think, times and places where it's probably a positive expectation strategy to do a tactical drop.
Yeah, or maybe dropping Steve Smith because Maxwell and Tim David, etc., are to follow.
Exactly, another great example. Yeah.
But again, even though I think this strategy looks great to discuss on paper, I think there is a lot of stigma attached to tactical dropping, because if you drop and that player, and if you come out and admit that you dropped that player for a particular reason, someone will also say that it's probably against the spirit of the game, or if that player actually scores runs, then the player who admits that he dropped a particular player strategically, social media will be after that player's life, like nothing else. But before Somesh asked that question, I wanted to come in and say that I think sometimes I think just looking at the drop sometimes by saying, okay, that drop costed so and so runs, I think it's also a very lazy way to look at things, because what people don't realize is that even after that drop, or even after that run out of missed opportunity, that player still had to score 80 runs. If you could bowl well, and if you could create more opportunities, then he or she wouldn't probably have scored those many runs. What do you think about this?
Yeah, well, I think it's all in line with what I was saying earlier about you should look at the expected runs after the drop rather than the actual runs after the drop, because you can't look at a player who's dropped in 20 and then they score 100 and say, well, that cost us 80, because actually no one's expected to average 80 in a match. So you have to look at it in terms of expectations rather than actual outcomes. And I think that, again, that kind of like process rather than outcomes is a critical way of looking at it. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Goprat, definitely.
Well, I think this is a great note to end the show on. And to all those who sent in their questions, I'd just like to say them, please keep sending them, because as you can see, we do discuss your questions, and sometimes those questions can lead up to different discussions. And whosoever liked this show and enjoyed the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow Dan on Twitter if you like me, and if you like Somesh, you can follow us as well. And do come up with your feedback, because we keep working on it. And if you have any other question or any other myth that you'd like to discuss, just drop us a DM. We'll try and address that. And for all things related to cricket, do follow cricket.com on all social media platforms, download the app, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel of cricket.com. Thank you so much. It's been a great show for us. Thank you.